Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to our next webcast that we're bringing you from Travel Weekly as part of our Roadmap to Recovery series. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Peter Deer, who is Managing Director of Fred Olsen Cruise Line. So welcome, Pete.
Hi Lucy. Hi.
So it's great to have you with us because I'm sure you're a very busy man, like everybody in the industry. It's been a really busy and challenging period, but you have been buying ships as well as other things in this period. So we're really interested to talk to you about your plans, but perhaps we should just talk initially just how the last sort of 5 months have gone for you. Just the initial sort of chaos and panic and then where you are now. So perhaps just bring us up to speed on that first.
Yeah, I think it's been a roller coaster ride from the moment when everything went wrong in March, and we made the early decision that we couldn't continue our operations as was for the obvious reasons. So then sitting there thinking, right, here we are. We're in a situation where our ships are not performing. They're not in operations. What do we do next, really? And with all the sort of downside of the travel industry at the time, I've always got a view in life that with every push comes a pull, with every up comes a down and such like from there. So I thought to myself, what can we actually do to see a long-term upside? Because in the short term, there's very little can be done. So I sort of could see that there could be opportunities to acquire additional ships. And as most people know, we haven't bought ships for a number of years now, and people are always asking me when we're going to be buying another ship. And I say, at some point. So I started down the journey of making time and investigation to see what was feasible. And we looked at a number of different options, and eventually we managed to make an agreement with Holland America Line to buy the Amsterdam and Rotterdam. And as you know, we've now calling them Valletta and Borealis.
I know, that's wonderful news. But, you say that, you just sort of suddenly acquired them. But, I mean, had you had your eye on those, or did you go? I mean, I'm just interested to know how it works. Clearly there are lots of cruise lines that are trying to offload some tonnage now because there's not the demand and they're perhaps a little bit worried about the future. You've come in and looked for some. So did you have your eye on those Holland America Line ships because clearly you wanted a certain size, or
Yep.
How did it work?
I actually started and said to myself, what ships in the world would be ship which would fit our brand? And if you think at worldwide, there are about 400 cruise ships in the world, 410, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you start to narrow it down and say you want a ship which is classed as a small ship, you want a ship which is relatively modern, so that sort of cuts those out. You want a ship which has got the right public space ratio to passenger to our guests on board.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you narrow it down from 400 probably to about 20 to 25. Then you look at those 20 or 25 and you say, well, which one do we think have got any chance we could actually have any discussions in that? And then you get that narrows it down even further. And before you know it, you end up with quite a small list. And then it's just a question of how you approach those people and how you go about it, and whether you think it's actually even realizable at that stage from there. And then it's just about finding a marrying way of dealing with it between, buyer and seller.
And was it then literally you only started looking because the crisis, you're saying every cloud has a silver lining, you saw that as perhaps being an opportunity. So was it ultimately a very quick deal that you ended up doing?
Relatively quick. I mean, it took a while for both the buyer and seller to really agree what they wanted out of this, and they start here, we started here, and finding some middle ground. But in terms of agreeing it internally, it was pretty clear to us that this was an opportunity. We believe in cruising in the long term in the UK, and that was really the first starting point for me. Is as a business, what is the long term of cruising? I believe it will carry on and grow for many years. Okay, we have its challenges today, but if you look outside of those challenges, all you've seen over the last 10 or 15 years is huge growth in terms of guest numbers. And I believe, in 5 to 10 years' time, we'll see lots of growth there. So as a cruise line, which hasn't grown much in the last few years. This is a great opportunity to grow our capacity and be back in there and actually taking a market share from UK cruising. So we worked really hard to do it at that stage.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that that it's an opportunity. You're confident about the future, but as every day goes by and the Foreign Office still isn't lifting this advice, does that make you a little bit more nervous? Because some would say it's quite a brave move, isn't it, to be acquiring new ships in this period? I mean, I know you're retiring some, and we'll go on to talk about that. But just in terms of that sort of confidence you have, you say, it's going to be good in 10 to 15 years' time. And I know you haven't got a crystal ball, but all the while the Foreign Office advice and the guidance doesn't change. That's quite a problem for the industry.
Yeah, I mean, the advice given by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, which specifically talks about cruising, has singled out cruising as something which, from a consumer perspective, appears to be a higher risk than any other form of travel. In my mind, the singling out is a little bit unfair on the industry, because as an industry, we were, certainly in the UK, I can't speak for everywhere, we were the first travel business to really say we can't continue in our current operations. So we all stopped without any discussions at a government level or whatever from there. And we're all responsible enough to know the most important thing we ought to get right is looking after the safety of our passengers and crew. And minded with that, we all stopped, and we all know that going back into service, it will only be when we believe we've organised ourselves in such a way that we do believe it's safe and the welfare of our passengers and crew come first. So we're really disappointed that the FCO made the advice that cruising from there, and really missed perhaps looking at the travel industry overall and say, well, actually, all types of travel have a form of risk. Who can judge what that risk is, and what's the science to really say that cruising is really high compared to, I don't know, flying an aeroplane where you're sitting next to someone for a number of hours? And that's the frustration. And I think some of that perhaps from the government level is because cruising is not as understood as perhaps a typical flight and hotel package holiday from there. But, we're working with the Department for Transport now and the FCO. We have protocols we're working up with CLEAR as the industry body in the UK to talk to them and say, this is the set of processes and protocols us, the UK cruise industry, are going to work to. And then we'll take baby steps back into operating. So the way Olsen Cruise Line sees it, our initial steps back into cruising, when we believe it is safe to do so, will be baby steps closer to home, so closer to the UK, then a little bit further. So less exotic cruising, certainly, to start with. And once we feel that's worked really well and we have confidence with everything we're doing, and the guests have confidence, the governments have confidence, then we can be more extensive in the cruising we do. But at the same time of that, the confidence also has to come from all of the countries we visit. So it really is a bit of a more probably to start with a pan-European understanding that if you're sailing from the UK as a British guest, and you're going to, let's call it Norway, we go to Norway a lot, then effectively both countries accept, they're happy to accept guests from the UK. So it's a bit about building a sea bridge between different destinations and different countries at the same time, and dealing with the challenges.
We've heard about air bridges, and now you're introducing these sea bridges. But you're right. I know what you mean. You've got to have that cooperation between the line that's operating and then obviously the destination you're going to. I mean, you're a very destination-focused cruise line, and you do some really exotic, amazing itineraries. So that's quite a change then if you're going to have, as you say, these baby steps, stay closer to home. But that's the plan initially, though.
Yeah, we've got internally, we've got steps we're going to make later this year in terms of what we think the product we'll put on in promotion and sale right into next year. And then as we feel things are becoming easier to operate in different destinations, we'll widen that. But timing wise, assuming things start to move in the right direction perhaps later this year, we're going to stay closer to home during 2021 and then think to ourselves, how far should we go towards the end of 2021? Should we operate fly crews, for example, from there? We would hope that in the next few months, we get some more lifted way of actually operating our business, and we get a bit more comfortable with that.
And you mentioned that you're obviously coming up with these protocols that you're agreeing as an industry, within the CLIA organisation. Would you say you're confident that the government is now listening? You said it perhaps didn't have the understanding of the cruise industry as it did a more traditional package. Do you think it is gaining that understanding? And do you think, you said perhaps by the end of the year, do you think that's likely?
I think I'm confident they're listening. I think we're all on the same page to recognise that cruising in the UK is a big part of travel. Employs probably 50,000 people overall when you consider, travel agents, the ports, the stevedores, the cruise lines, and the people from there. It will take time for them to get a good understanding. The bit I'm not confident on is getting that understanding and whether they're going to be confident that we're doing all the right things to make sure we're keeping our guests on our cruise safe. And I think that comes with time and taking those baby steps from there. So it's difficult to predict the timing of when each line will go back into service. And I know that's a question. If I had £1 for every time someone asked me that, well, I would be a little bit wealthier than I am today, sort of thing.
I know, and I didn't expect you to know the exact answer, but I know you are, or certainly I saw a clip that Fred Olsen Jr. put out last week, and he talked about how you are going to be ready soon to announce you're sort of coming back. So are you able to talk to us at all around some of the measures that you're putting in place to be ready?
I think the measure we're putting in place, we've got a safe sailing charter, which we built internally, which says we will not go sailing until we're really super confident everything we put in place protects the interests of our crew initially. So we feel really comfortable that when they get on board, they're very happy with the health protocol we put in place. And then on top of that, the second layer, in terms of when our passengers come for their vacation, they feel equally comfortable with coming on board our ships and don't feel that there's a risk they're taking from there. So there are various things which we believe will become something of focus, and lots of people are talking over buffets and the social distancing or physical distancing on board from there, and we're working out the way we can do routines on board. But I think a lot of it actually comes back from that will be making sure people who join the ship in the first place have been tested or are COVID free. Making sure the people who are joining, crew of course to start with, making sure everyone on board we're 100% confident they're COVID free, and then secondly making sure people who join are COVID free. Oh, my screen's gone off there.
Don't worry, we can still see you. Don't worry.
Okay.
So obviously you've got ships in Dover and Liverpool. Will you be putting in testing facilities there? I know people can do temperature checks, but what will you be putting in your embarkation ports then?
Well, we're looking at doing some form of testing, but at the moment the testing is not widely available to buy, and until it is, that's something we're thinking exactly how will we achieve that. Of course, you can get testing at home now. You can get it roadside and these things, and you get the results pretty well within 24 hours. But the ultimate goal, I guess, from a cruise line or anyone, is that you can walk up. It's a simple test. Within 10 minutes, you get the result, and you walk straight on board a cruise ship. It's a question of when the timing comes. We're talking to various companies which provide this type of equipment to do the testing. But the testing is not readily available at the moment. And when it comes available, the first people are likely to get it on any sort of vast form would be the NHS, for the obvious reason, and so they should.
Yeah, okay. But it's something you're working on. I wanted to talk to you about, you mentioned there that it's really important that your customers feel safe, because obviously they don't want to cruise if they feel at all at risk. You must have been talking to your customers during this period and sort of measuring demand. You'll know an element of that from how many people have rebooked for next year, etc. But your age profile, I don't know it exactly, but I'm guessing it is the more mature traveller.
Absolutely.
So, and of course, those people are going to be possibly more nervous because of some of the advice that we've been getting from the NHS. around shielding, etc. So just talking about your passengers and what you're doing to reassure them, and how confident you are that you're going to get enough people of that age demographic wanting to come back and cruise.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that, with the advice given by the government about, really the sort of plus 50, that there's a concern about travelling and be careful and all this, particularly if you've got underlying health conditions. We're not seeing that at all, actually. We're actually seeing that our guests want to go cruising, and they're sort of saying, we've had enough sitting at home, we're fed up with this, and we kind of accept that life has got to move on. And we've seen our bookings being really strong for particularly next year. I think most people are thinking that 2020 is a bit of a write-off, really, from that perspective, from a travel perspective. So let's not focus on this year. Let's use the monies which we may have to spoil ourselves on home things, what it might be, refurbishing the home or doing a stay vacation or something like a staycation or something like that. But next year, they're saying we definitely want to go cruising. And by then everything will be more resolved, and cruise lines would have got their structure and their processing in place, will give them confidence to come back on board with us. And we're really seeing that throughout the whole booking, which is quite surprising, because I thought we'd see a certain reluctance with some of the news we've seen over time, but we're not seeing that at all. It's really good, and I think the industry will find its way through this, provided we can get back, as we call it, back in the water fairly quickly by next year.
Yeah. Oh, I'm delighted to hear that. And in terms of what they're booking, again, I mean, I know you're saying you only want to travel closer to home, but is that sort of where the people, where your main customer base are feeling more comfortable? They want to cruise, but perhaps it will be the fjords or Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we're finding. We're finding holidays which are closer to home, and they are definitely the ones they've been focused on. So if I go back 1 or 2 months before, we'd cancel some of our more exotic cruises. The cruises which were being booked at that stage were Scottish Island cruises around the UK, 5-night cruises to Norway, to Northern Europe, some to Southern Europe, but not any more than, I would say, cruises of duration of 10 to 14 days. They felt as though their comfort zone was really that European base. From there, and not shorter durations, definitely initially. Definitely, I would say the sort of 10 nights and less has been slightly more popular than further with that, thinking, well, if I go for that length of time, if there is a problem, then we're not very far from home. We're probably, in reality, probably 3 or 4 sailing days from home. I think that's their thinking, their philosophy behind that. We're not saying that to them, but I think that's what they're thinking themselves. Okay, very interesting. And then the other issue, of course, is insurance for more mature travellers. That's been a big hurdle, I guess, and what we've talked about a lot, because people aren't going to want to, they might want to travel. Like you're saying, there's demand there. They want to get out of their homes, but they won't travel if they're not insured, I'm sure. So how are you finding that whole issue? I think to start with, we saw when the insurance company clamped up and said, COVID, it's excluded and such like. That was a major problem to any travel business, particularly cruise, because we insist you should have a cruise travel insurance before you cruise with us, for all the reasons and all the implications it could have. But a lot of the cruise policies, including the ones which we're involved with, are opening up and have COVID clauses which are now covered. Initially, it was covering if you become medically ill because of COVID when you're away. And now it's all about if you have to cancel in advance your cruise from there. But I think on what is happening, though, and to be honest, I haven't got total clarity on it, because they're covering COVID, there is an additional premium which our customers are having to pay into from there. And I think that's something which will probably become more competitive, more refined over a period of time. So the premium will find a fair and level playing field. But at the moment, it's probably a little bit pricey. But you think if more people come and offer it, then the prices will, as you say, become more competitive. I think as time people understand what the real risk behind the insurers, the underwriters really understand what the risk is behind this and what their loss ratios are, they can say, well, actually, we don't need to have X premium. We can lower it to Y premium from there. Fine. Okay. All right. Very interesting.
let's talk about your new ships again, because I do want to come back to that, because you mentioned you've already announced the names. It's the Boletta and the Borealis that you're going to be renaming these two ships, and I know they're taking over from Boudica and Blackwatch. So, but it's not a like for like swap in terms of capacity. This still means you're going to have, I think, about 30% extra capacity to fill. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So part of my strategy to do this was to actually increase the number of passengers we can sail with, and therefore market share. So buying one didn't really resolve what I call as something we wanted to do, the strategy. Buying two meant a 30% increase in passenger capacity. The good thing with Boletta and Borealis, they are still, as our customers describe a small ship, under the magic 1,500 passenger mark. In the old days, it used to be on the old days, it used to be 500 passengers, then it was 800, and then someone said it's 1,000. And now that magic mark, if what they tell us, is 1,500 passengers. And Balmoral is about 1,375. These are 1,410, something like that. And we find on Balmoral, it's still easy enough to find your way around, find friends on board, know the bars you do like and where you want to go on board. And we think that works. The only difference really between our current ships and the two new ships, the ships in physical dimensions are a bit bigger, so the cabins are bigger. It feels more premium on board, and the public space on board, there are more venues, which are really exciting to us. So we've got at the top of the ship, we have a sliding magrodome, so you can enjoy the pool either when it's sunny, or you can close it up and enjoy an inclement weather from there. There's a theatre which has kitchens in, so people could watch kitchen cooking and things like this. And there's various venues to do all sorts of different music on board the ship. So we're really excited to get our hands on this and actually put it in the Fred Olsen style.
I know, it sounds very exciting. And you mentioned there that it feels a bit more premium. So will you be pricing it a little bit more premium? I mean, the people that have been moved from the other two ships onto this one, I mean, they're just like happy days for them, isn't it? They're going to just be switched over, I guess. But when you're pricing it and you're planning itineraries, are these going to be slightly more expensive on these two new ships than the other two?
I think the intention is the business. If we've got a pricing model which is based on 4 to 4.5 star cruising, essentially, as I call it, which is slightly premium, slightly outside of mainstream, and we're not trying to take a huge jump above what our other ship will be priced at. But we'd like to think that because of the cabin configuration, there's more suites, more outside balcony cabins and outside premium cabins from there, that we'll get a slight increase in our overall yields for the vessel by doing so. But we're not trying to take it in and say we're going to increase prices by 20% or something like that. Our customers might sometimes think that's what we do, but that's not the intention. Our brand fits a certain market, and that's what we're intending to continue to focus on.
Okay, but there are, as you're saying, there's more cabin types and more options that if you wanted to upgrade, you could do.
Premium options.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And you mentioned there about giving it the Fred Olsen sort of feel, I guess, because you want them to be within the fleet, within the family. Is there much to do to make them? I mean, you've probably got to put kettles in every cabin, I expect, to make it British. But I mean, what else are you going to be doing to the ships to bring them into the family?
We haven't decided everything we want to do at this stage, but certainly it needs the Fred Olsen finesse of how we like to operate, the colour scheme we want to operate to. So some of it's a bit of a secret at the moment, which we'll be releasing over a period of time. But there's some different restaurant opportunities we would like to do, alternative dining. We'd also want to have more flexible dining. We've got guests who really love fixed dining times, and they don't want to change from that. And it's a real split. I'm very surprised, but they want to sit down for dinner at 6:30, and that's it, simple as that. And we've got guests who really want complete flexibility for what they want. And what we want to do with these two ships, in fact, we want to do on our other ships, other two ships as well, Braemar and Balmoral, is provide a flexible dining arrangement overall. We're working out a plan of how we can do that, and have some really nice alternative dining options for people who want to have a different food and probably more international cuisine. in different parts of the board. And there's loads of opportunity for these ships to do so. So we're really excited in some of the designs we're putting together at the moment.
At least you've got time now as well, because to do all this amazing stuff, which is great. Now, look, Peter, a couple of times you've mentioned taking more market share. So I'm interested in that. Clearly, you'd be doing that anyway, wouldn't you? If you've got 30% extra capacity, you'd assume you'd take some more. But, you know, clearly one of your biggest competitors, you know, has failed during this period. You know, we've lost CMV. So, you know, how does that impact your plans, I guess? Because, you know, there is, you know, look, I'm not saying we're not sad about that. It's a terrible thing to have happened, but it's happened. And so does that give you more opportunity?
I think firstly that it's really sad about CMV. I mean, they're not located very far from where we are in Suffolk, actually in Essex from there. Pretty sad for the teams there worked so hard to grow a brand over the last 10 years. And they've grown a brand, and as I describe it, is a brand which is really focusing on a more budget style cruising. You know, they're known to sell cruises at a lower price level than ourselves and many other UK operators from there. I suspect there'll be customers who have sailed with CMV are still looking for a budget style of cruising, and then have to determine how they go about that, or whether someone else pops up in the market, you know, sort of CMV2 or something like that, maybe, who knows. And there'll be people outside of that and say, well, okay, what do I do with my cruising next? And I think the question will be, do I want to do small ship cruising, or am I happy to go into larger, as I described it, mainstream cruising? And I think it depends on the decision they make at that stage. What we find when we talk to our customers, one of the reasons they come with us, it's all about going on smaller ships and being known as a name rather than as a number from there. So I really don't know if the customers from CMB are more thinking about budget, or it's all about small ship cruising. I suspect it's a combination of both. And for sure, we're going to see some transfers over from CMV for people who say that's a cruise line which has a similar itinerary style than CMV did. It's still small ship cruising, but I'm sure all the other cruise lines will see the reflection of the demise of CMV in their bookings going forward. We've seen a few so far, but it's all early days at this stage.
Of course. And as you say, it's like, you know, whenever there's a gap, somebody normally fills it, doesn't? So we'll watch this space, I guess.
It may happen.
Say again, it may do. I mean, I guess we're talking, you know, a lot of what we've talked about, Peter, is really positive, forward-looking stuff, but we can't ignore the fact that every company has been hurting through this period. And, you know, you've had to announce a reduction in headcount, you know, at your own head office, which I think you announced literally just only a few weeks after announcing the new capacity. So, you know, I know everyone's having to sort of restructure and get through, but what impact does that have on your business and your future plans?
I think the problem we had with, you know, why we made a decision to restructure, which was something which I've tried to park as long as I possibly could to see if, you know, we could see we see some light at the end of the tunnel, so we could avoid some of this. But in reality, during this period of layup and pause of operations, every cruise line has hemorrhaged a normal amount of cash. So when we go back into service, whenever that may be, someone's got to pay this debt back somehow. And, you know, that's my job to see how we can run our operations as efficiently as possible. So I sat down in every area of the business, not just staff, in everything we do, and said to the team, we've got to look at everything we do and almost sort of bake it back to sort of a zero base and say, if we're building it from scratch again and we're going to buy a pencil, what pencil would we buy? And they said, well, we wouldn't buy the luxury one over there, we'd buy it over there. And, you know, and what we do with staffing, what we do with contracts. And we've had to slowly, and we're still doing it, migrate it downwards to build back on that from there. But it's an extremely sad time. I mean, some of these people have worked with me and for me for a long time, you know, and sadly we've had to lose them. What I do hope going forward, however, is that there are chances for longer term re-employment, you know, when the industry gets in a much more stable state and we're cruising again and things are going well, and we realise there's gaps in our restructuring, which we've done some quite radical things to reduce our overall headcount, and then look at where we've got the gaps, and then look to the teams who were working with us, the people, and say, great, we can hopefully find home for those people again. That's what I'd really like to do, but it won't be for everyone, sadly.
No, and I understand that, but there's a lot of talent out there, not just lost from you guys. I mean, the industry is hemorrhaging some great people, really people they don't want to lose at all. So it's very sad. Well, let's hope you can re-employ them as things start to get better. I mean, another thing.
It goes for our crew as well, actually. It goes for our crew as well, Lucy. I mean, our crew, we had to, our crew went home to the different regions, whether they're European or Asian based, and we employ a lot of people from the Philippines and India, and we're in contact with them through our manning agents over there, and we really want them to come back to our brand. They work really well for us. Well, now we've got these new ships, and we know they're aware of them. We've been talking to them, and they're willing to come back. They want to come back to us. They've had good experience of working for Fred Olsen's. We have a certain family attitude to the way we do things, right from Fred to me and right to all the teams, and we care for the people we employ, and it'd be great to get cruising again and bring these people back on board and see people I have not seen now for 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have done some lovely things through this. You gave away all the food, didn't you, from all your ships that were in Scotland, and didn't you give away all your excess food, I guess, that you weren't going to be using, and to help people in Scotland?
Yeah, we've done it all over. We did some in the Caribbean, we've done some in Scotland. We simply looked at things and thinking, this is surplus to requirements. What could we do to help wherever we are, the local communities out? So we've done a few things which have helped people out, but they're small things to do in the value of everything else which is going on in the world at the moment. But it's better to do a little bit rather than nothing, as far as I'm concerned.
Couldn't agree more. Now listen, I'm conscious of your time, Pete, but just to look even further ahead than next year, because you've made some quite exciting announcements. I know you're going to stay closer to home, but 2022, 2023, you're already looking at that. You've announced Havana as a turnaround port, which is super exciting. And then you've got quite a few voyages on sale, a new one in North America. So just quickly give us a flavour of some of your because you clearly are full steam ahead in your mind for what's going to happen in the future.
We have a really exciting world cruise in 2022. I can't put the details out too much at the moment.
Oh, go on.
No, I can't. I'm not allowed to. But it's going to be a really exciting. It's slightly changed from what we said we're going to do, and we're just working through to make sure we can book all the berths. But it's on one of our new vessels. It's on Borealis. I'm making sure I've got them the right way round now. And the great thing with these two vessels, they have higher speeds than our current vessels, which means on longer cruises such as grand voyages, world cruises, things like this, it gives the opportunity to see more places during those longer cruises. And I think we'll do it really well on both ships. I'm really excited to do that. We'll still stick with some of our mainframe work of cruising, which is the European cruising during the summer months, and really specialising in Norway. We just want to do it in a more fun way on board. We've got ideas of how we can bring more of the destination to life on these two new vessels because of how they're styled on board. So I'm really looking forward to
you are being a real tease, Pete. You're giving us little bits here, and we'll have to get you back on so you can tell us a little bit more. Now, two things. First of all, is that a fax machine behind you? Because something's just come through on it that could be breaking news.
No, this is, if you really want to know, it's my kids printing things in another room for their iPads, Sorry about the noise. I didn't know they were doing it.
I thought this could be an exclusive. But anyway, but moving on from that, just a final word, Pete, about travel agents and the trade. They're very important to your business. In terms of the restructure, I don't think you've still got your sales team and you've got your trade salespeople still working with agents. Is that still happening?
Yeah, I mean, we've done some restructuring within our sales and our marketing team, and the restructuring means we've lost some of the team, but it doesn't mean that we don't want to have strong travel trade support. In fact, want stronger travel trade support throughout this whole pause of operations we've done here. At all times, we've tried to support the way the difficulty travel agents have actually had during this time to manage the refunds or manage customers' expectations. And we've kept a high number of our staff employed. We could have put them many on furlough to make sure that our guest services can actually manage that whole process from customer to the travel agent through to us, so we can actually manage that process efficiently from there. And at the same time, where the guest has decided to cancel, we've still paid the commissions based on what we think was fair to the travel agent. It's really important that, as a business, the way I see it, and I've always seen it this way, is the brand should always be talking really loud about Fred Olsen Cruise Lines and what we do really well, etc., and how it fits certain types of guests. But our sales avenues should be really wide, and the travel trade is one big way of selling for us, and we really want them to continue to support us. And now we've got 2 new ships. We want them to support us even more, with our increasing capacity.
Oh, well, listen, I'm sure. Oh, look, your little boy's coming. There's one of them. Hi. Well, the only thing I was going to say was, when you launch these new ships, so is there going to be an opportunity for the trade? I know it's difficult with social distancing and how many people you can have at an event, but will there be an opportunity for the trade to see your new ships?
Yeah, we're working on the plan at the moment, and if we've got it right, and I can't really say today, but it's very likely that when they go back into service, there'll be an opportunity to have 1 or 2 days on board. That's our plan as part of a launch. We're just refining it at the moment.
Okay, well, what a fantastic place to end on. I mean, it will bring a bit more normality back to all of us if we can start doing that again. It's so lovely to speak to someone with such a positive story and such optimism for not just the cruise sector, but for travel generally. So absolute delight to talk to you today, Pete. Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you, Lucy.
All right.